We'll start the live feed. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regulatory section of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. So we'll move on to agenda item 1. That is apologies. I haven't got any. Is there any from the floor? No apologies from the floor. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest, and members will take them as we go through the meeting. Members, just in a change to the schedule, we're going to go to agenda item 7, which is confidential business, and that's to accommodate some of the attendees. So I'll read out the statement. Members and online viewers, in accordance... Oh, sorry, folks, got a second proposal and seconder to move into confidential. Thank you. Proposed by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Lavery. Members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into a confidential session of the Council. This means that we will be turning off the public feed of the meeting, and this will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I ask the ICT officers to please turn off the live feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed? Thank you. Can I get a proposer and second to accept the decisions we made in committee? Councillor Flaherty, Alderman Candy, thank you very much. Okay, members, we're moving on to agenda item 3, and it's a report from the Director of Regulatory Services, Facilities and Assets. The first item, 3.1, is an information item. It's on the 6 monthly business plans. I'm happy to note, but we'll take questions if members have any questions in relation to the business plans. Are we happy to note, members? Yes. Thank you very much. Then we will move on to agenda item 4. There's 2 information items, and Damien is going to take us through the Northern Ireland Planning Statistics 25-26 Quarter 1 Bulletin. So, Damien, I'm going to hand over to you for this one. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Members, the report before you relates to the statistical bulletin published by Department for Infrastructure for Quarter 1 of the current business year. It provides an overview of planning activity across all planning authorities and gives information on planning processing times and performance. You'll note from the report that during Quarter 1 the Council met 1 of its 3 statutory targets, and that was for planning enforcement. In fact, we comfortably met the target with almost 80% of cases concluded in 39 weeks, and we were the 4th best performer out of 11 councils. While we unfortunately missed the targets for local and major applications, our processing times of 20 weeks and 31 weeks respectively reflect the average achieved across all councils. Furthermore, only 4 of the 11 councils met the target for locals and majors, and most of those which did have significantly fewer live applications than we do. In order to offer some further context to the Quarter 1 performance, I think it's relevant to highlight that the redeployment of 2 senior planners to the LDP team had a significant impact, although the redeployment was a necessity to help progress the Council's local development plan. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Damien, thank you very much for that report. Members, is there any questions in relation to what you've heard from Damien? He's content? He's happy to note? Okay. In terms of 4.2, Damien covered quite a lot of there. Is there any questions in 4.2, or are we again happy to note 4.2? Happy to note. Thank you, members. Okay, that takes us on to agenda item 5, and that's a report from the Head of Building Control. And there is 2 decision items to start us off. 5.1 is a street naming report for Old Quarry Manor. So, Tom, I will bring you in for this one.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Yes, item 5.1 is the request for a naming of a housing development consisting of 60 dwellings off the Katy Road in Armagh. The applicant's original preferred name of the development was Limestone Manor. However, officers were of the opinion that this wasn't suitable because there's another development close by known as Limestone Square, which could have caused confusion, particularly for blue light services. The applicant's second preference for name was Old Quarry Lodge, and due to the fact that the site's adjacent to an old disused quarry, and the area has strong links with that historical quarrying industry. However, after discussion, it was the opinion that the term lodge does not normally suit a major housing development of this type. So through discussions with the developer, the name Old Quarry Manor was deemed to be most appropriate and suitable, and agreed by the applicants as to be brought forward for committee's approval. So the recommendation therefore is for members' approval of the name Old Quarry Manor for this housing development. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Tom, thank you very much for that. Members, you've heard Tom's report. Is there any questions on the naming of Old Quarry Lodge? If not, can I have a proposer? Proposed by Alderman Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Fergal Donnelly. All agreed, members? Thank you. We're moving on to 5.2, which is a dual language street naming request for Rose Cottages in Portadown. And Tom, I will bring you in for this report.
Thank you again, Chair. By way of background, members will recall that in March 2025, Council received an application for a dual language street sign, namely Irish, in respect of Rose Cottage in Portadown. And as per the Council's street naming and numbering policy, the application process comprised of 2 stages, as noted in the body of the report. As provided under the policy, officers have undertaken the postal survey, as this is a stage 2, to canvass the views of all the relevant occupiers on that street. And following verification of the survey responses, I can confirm that the responses were as noted in the body of the report. Officers not aware of any written objections to this application. There were, just for members' information, there were a few unrelated comments, but mostly to do with bin collections and litter, but unrelated to the street signage. A substantial, also for full disclosure to members, a substantial number of responses were collected and hand delivered. As members will be aware, these are prepaid envelopes. So they're collected and hand delivered to the council in a single batch, but there is no evidence of any tampering of the submissions, as they included a mix of both views in support and an objection to this application. Members will note that the requisite threshold under the policy has therefore been met, i.e. the number of responses in agreement with the application represent not less than 2/3 of the occupiers on that street. Therefore, as per Article 11 of the legislation, it is now a matter for members to decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve this application for the dual language. So the recommendation therefore for members is that members are asked to review the information contained within the report and decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve this application for dual language in respect of Rose Cottages in Portadown. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Tom, thank you very much for that report. Members, you've heard of that report. Is there any questions for Tom in relation to that? If I don't have any questions, can we have a proposal? Councillor Duffy?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom. It's just well past the threshold, so I propose that Council use its discretionary powers to approve the application for dual language street signage at Rose Cottages, Portadown.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. I'll bring in Councillor O'Dowd.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Okay, thank you very much. Alderman Wilson, I'll bring in next.
Yeah, it's just in line with our previous discussions on the applications. I'm not aware personally of any objections or that have been made known to me, so it's just to ask for a recorded vote on this one as per usual. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alderman Wilson. Okay, members, it's been proposed and seconded. There has been a request for a recorded vote on it. So we will open the votes shortly. You'll see them on your screen. So it should be there now. So members, if you could please vote. I think we made the right call with that. Okay, members, the voting results are in. Yes was Councillor Kevin Savage, Councillor Mary O'Dowd, Councillor Fergal Donnelly, Councillor Paul Duffy, Councillor Peter Lavery, Councillor Sorka McGowan, Councillor John O'Kane, and abstaining were Councillor Scott Armstrong, Councillor Judy Flaherty, Alderman Gordon Kennedy, Councillor Kyle Mudra, Councillor Alan Mulholland, Alderman Garth Wilson, and Councillor Ian Wilson. Okay, so that is passed then, members. Okay, guys, I'll bring Tom back in for, just get my bearings here. We're on to 5.3, which is a dual language street naming request, and this is an item for information, so Tom's going to take us through this now.
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of background from our members' information, that in the period of June to September 25, Council received a further 4 applications from various applicants in relation to applications for dual language street signage, and the reference numbers are as noted in the report. And as for the Council's adopted street name and numbering policy, it comprises of 2 stages as set out in the report. These applications are currently at stage 1 in the application process. As previously stated, the 4 applications were received by the Council between June and September, and the applications were accompanied by a signed petition purported to represent occupiers of premises on those various streets. As provided under the policy, these petitions required verification against the electoral register office, or register. Following verification of the names on the 4 petitions with the electoral register, council officers can confirm the following. One of the 4 applications, reference 072530, has not met the requisite threshold, i.e. it represents less than 1/3 of all the occupiers on that street. Therefore, this application has not met the criteria set out in the policy where it be considered by council. The applicant will be notified accordingly. 3 of the 4 applications have met the requisite threshold under the policy, where the petition represents more than 1/3 of the occupiers on that street. Therefore, in accordance with the policy, these 3 applications are valid and can progress to stage 2 of the application process. The 3 applications cover a range of streets from 14 to 50 houses requiring to be surveyed. Given the resources required to undertake the surveys and analyse the results and preparation of the subsequent reports, it would be the officer's intention that the surveys are carried in a phased and manageable manner. Thank you, Chair. This is for information, but happy to take any questions members may have.
Tom, thank you very much for that. Members, that was an information item. Is there any questions for Tom on it? We are happy to note. Okay, thank you, members. That takes us to item 5.4. Again, it's an item for information and it's an update on the building control and property certificate application workload. So, Tom, if you indicate, I'll bring you in, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is just to update members on some of the workload undertaken by the Department during the first 7 months of this financial year. As noted in Appendix 6, in the last 7 months we've received 1,682 building regulation applications with a notional investment value of just over 139 million. In the last 7 months we carried out just over 9,800 site inspections and undertaken 1,015 plan assessments and issued a total of 1,497 statutory notices, including 392 statutory approvals. The Department has also continued to deliver the Council's property certificate function for the conveyance of properties. In the last 7 months, we've received and administered 2,305 new applications and issued 2,199 certificates to solicitors and agents relating to property sales. Thank you, Chair. This is for members' information, but happy to take any questions members may have.
Tom, thank you very much. Councillor Lavery, I'll bring you in next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom, for that report. Just wanted to double check that was 139 million notional value. Did you say those projects? That's a huge amount of investment in this borough over that time frame. It's showing strong growth in both, business and residential in this borough. Just you may not have the information in hand. Is that sort of a percentage growth on the previous time period for the the time before that, or sort of we're seeing that sort of maybe a steady growth or for the borough? Just if you have that information in hand, or if that can be circulated afterwards. But I think a lot of other council will be very envious at that figure that Tom's just outlined, and seems that ABC is the place to go to both live and to grow your business, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, Councillor Lavery. I'll bring Tom in. Maybe you can provide some clarity on what you're asking for.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lavery, for the question. We do have that information. I can circulate. We have that for the past 2 years over the previous 7 months, so it may be useful to give it in context. Answer to your question is it is marginally up by over 200,000 on this time last month, so there is showing good sort of construction development in the area, which is positive.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Tom. Members, that was an item for information. Okay, that takes us now on to agenda item 6 on its correspondence. In 6.1 we have one letter in relation to the regulations of HMOs from Minister Lyons from the Department for Communities. Is there any questions on that? Okay, Councillor Mudry wants to come in on that. I'll bring you in now, Councillor Mudry.
Thank you, Chair, for bringing me in. Yes, just in relation to this letter that's been sent, addressed to the Chief Executive and all Chief Executives of local councils. Within the letter, the Minister has set out very clearly that it's within the remit of each council in Northern Ireland to set policies with regards to HMO provision. He's reminded all councils that they can also set restrictions on the number or percentages of HMOs to avoid an over-concentration in residential areas and ultimately to protect the character and the amenity of the area in question. He's also went on to say within the letter that controls on numbers of HMOs are necessary to ensure that detrimental effects on residential areas are minimised. And when we apply that to the local area, it's a matter we've discussed at length before. And the statistics, when you apply it to ABC, we look at all the major towns in ABC. We look at Banbridge, for example, there's 1 HMO. We look at Lurgan, where there is a housing need, there are only 3 HMOs. We look at Armagh, 5. And then you look at Portadown, there are 38 with 14 in 1 street. So we have to consider what the Minister has said here. We've looked at a number of applications in the past. We look at that figure, that's from April 25, the HMOs in the local area. Within recent weeks, there have been a number of HMOs that have passed through this council on delegated authority that have been approved. So can I just ask, are we as a council any further on with regards to introducing some form of restrictions? Because we've sat through a number of workshops now on this very topic. It's been raised a number of times. In one of my first meetings as a councillor, it was raised, I think at the time, by Alderman Anderson, the specific need for our own HMO policy. And without that, I think members are effectively powerless to consider applications before us. So if we can just have an update as to where we actually stand.
Thank you, Councillor McRae. I'm going to bring in our Director Elizabeth first, and then I will bring in Damien.
Thank you, and thanks, Councillor Moutray. Last night there was a training session. This was also raised at Environmental Services Committee last night, and as you know, the licensing of HMOs falls to Environmental Health, but it is processed through Belfast City Council. So we had a presentation and training last night for elected members, and I think it'd be worthy to share that with all elected members. So my ask will be from this meeting is that it's shared with all elected members. To pick up your point just around the clustering and planning, I'm going to hand that over to Damien Mulligan, and he's going to come in because that will be picked up. And as you know, there's been a number of workshops with elected members around HMOs, but certainly at that training last night, from the overview from Belfast City Council, who provide the licensing side of things, there was a certain degree of reassurance provided to members as to the local situation and how the licensing process is taking place. But I'll ask Damien to come in on the LDP side of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Damien, I'll bring in now.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Elizabeth. Members, look, you'll recall there was a workshop back in August in relation to the local development plan and specifically consideration of a draft policy in relation to HMOs, and that was left with members to share with their parties and to come back with comments to the team. Look, we're not in confidential, and I'm not in a position to get into detail about what that draft policy looks like at the moment, but members will know, hopefully. They'll have either been to the workshop or will have been shared with them. We will be bringing forward the draft plan strategy of our local development plan later this business year. And look, again, because we're not confidential, I'm sort of limited in terms of what more I can say at this stage. Members will also be aware that while the draft plan strategy is pending, we do have a position where any applications that come before us, we will be looking at those in the context of current planning policy, in particular strategic planning policy statement. So, for example, we can look at impacts on amenity, car parking, traffic. We're also working, and members will be aware of this, working very, very closely with the environmental health team. And if they have any evidence-based indicators of concern relating to high density development in the vicinity of a site which is proposed for a HMO, they will make the planning department aware of that so that it can be taken into consideration. But we do, you know, if the evidence is there, we will of course consider it. And that is the position that we're following at the present time. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Damien. I accept that. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Murtry. Okay, members, there is no, agenda item 9 is AOB and there is none. So we will have a recess until 4 o'clock and we consider the planning applications at that stage. Okay, members, thank you very much for your time. please? Thank you. Okay, members, we're moving on to agenda item 8, and that's applications for planning permission to be considered by the committee as per the schedule of planning applications. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the planning section of the meeting of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee. Audio recording has been used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to it being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. Also, during the course of this section of the meeting, questions may be asked by councillors who are members of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee, of planning officers, applicants for planning permission, objectors, or those speaking on their behalf. In doing so, councillors endeavour to ascertain the information which they feel is necessary to enable them to determine the application. However, members of the public should note that councillors will not reach a conclusion as to whether an application should be approved, refused or deferred until the debate on the application has concluded. There's 4 items for decision this evening, members. Appendix 1 is application number LA08 2023 31110 from Mr Bernard Fern, and it's a refusal. As this is a returning application and I didn't attend the site visit, I'm going to declare I'm not going to take part in it because I didn't go on the site visit. So I'm going to vacate the chair and hand over to the vice chair for this decision item. Okay.
Okay, everyone. Now, as this is my first time, please have patience. So we are going to go into Appendix 1. That's me. So, sorry, we have Councillor O'Kane looking in.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Oh, sorry, can you just say it again, sorry? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just want to, I actually called this application, I know in the first hearing here, I know there's different councillor named on it, but the next day I had realised that it was myself who had called it in, and I didn't do the site visit, so I'm going to excuse myself as well.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Yeah, just like the Chair and Councillor O'Kane, I wasn't at the site visit, so I'm going to excuse myself as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, same as the other members. I wasn't.
Sorry, 1 second, sorry. At you now. Sorry, Councillor Lawler.
Your apologies accepted, Chair. Just similar as the other members, I wasn't at the site visit, so not able to take part in this application, and just to advocate myself.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. On the same vein, I wasn't able to attend the site visit, so I'll excuse myself from this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Moutray.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wasn't able to attend the site visit. Apologies for that, so I'll excuse myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other? Well, we've got the declarations. We are going to go now to Roisin, who is over there. We're going to go to Roisin to give the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is an outline application for a dwelling and garage located in the rural area just outside the small settlement of College Lands. Members will recall this application was presented to the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee meeting on the 1st of October with a recommendation to refuse. And as Councillor O'Kane has pointed out, the report stated that the reason the application was being referred to committee was that it was called in by Councillor O'Hanlon. However, officers can advise this was an error in the report and should have stated the application was called in by Councillor O'Kane. At the meeting on the 1st of October, it was agreed that this application be deferred pending a site visit by members and additional information from officers regarding the policy basis on which existing dwellings outside the Settlement Development Limited College lands were granted planning permission. The site visit was held on Friday the 10th of October, and details of the site visit and those members who attended are set out in more detail in the report. Attached to the report is a map and a table which details the dwellings which have been erected in the vicinity of the application site and their planning history, as well as details of more recent planning approvals in the area. The table identifies 15 properties, and of those 15, 8 were approved prior to the current plan policies coming into effect, and no planning history for 2 of the properties can be found which demonstrates they were not approved under the current plan and policy context for development in the countryside. Of the remaining 5, 1 was approved by the Council under CTY 8 of PPS 21, and the other 2 approved under CTY 10 of PPS 21. The remaining 2 are located within the settlement limit of college lands, therefore were not required to be assessed as development in the countryside. None of the dwellings were approved under the cluster policy CTY 2A of PPS 21. Officers remain satisfied that the proposal fails to comply with the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies for the reasons set out in the original planning report and associated addendum. And on this basis, there's no change to the officer recommendation the planning permission be refused. And I'm happy to take you through the slides again. And there just gives you, the red arrow shows you the location where we are to the south of Charlemont. And this is the site location plan. You can see the application site outlined in red and the laneway up to the application site. And this is from the area plan showing you the settlement limits of college land. And this is the context of the settlement limit in relation to where the application site is. The red arrow shows you where the application site is on the edge of the limit. And this is an aerial photograph of the site. You can just see the wider area there. And a closer aerial photograph of the site, again showing you the application site and the access way up to it. And obviously you recall from our site visit, this is standing at the bottom of the laneway leading up to the application site. And again, the red arrow shows you where the application site is. And this is just further up the laneway. That's the application site in front of us there. So this is actually standing up on the application site, looking down towards number 114A College Lands, down towards the settlement limit. And again, this is another one from the application site, looking down towards the settlement limit. And this is taken from the laneway at number 114, and this is actually inside the settlement limit, the photograph's taken from. And this is just taken from the access. This is where the access point to the site joins a public road. And then this is just looking north, and there's a number of other dwellings to the north of the application site. We can't really see them in the photograph, but I know that we travelled up and down the road, and members were aware of the other development there. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Roisin. There has been an addendum report been circulated. If hopefully you've all looked at it and read it. Is there any questions for Roisin? No? Great. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Alderman Wilson, I'll bring you in now.
Yeah, thanks. And I suppose just following on from the site visit, I was sort of struck by the level of development just in the general vicinity. It certainly stood out to me, and it couldn't be considered, I suppose, traditional, countryside type development, I suppose due to the concentration of it. And I know there is a development limit there, and I understand that, but just the nature of the road system in around it, it did it appeared to me more like, you would find in like a gated development or something like that, in a rural type setting in some other country. It was just so concentrated, and it's quite unique. So, that's sort of the approach that I'm taking on this. There is a unique aspect to this, and whilst there is a development limit, I don't feel the development limit is clearly defined. That in terms of, there's a development limit where I live, and it's very clearly defined, and you can see where the houses stop and where the houses start. There is a natural break in that, and you often see in other areas. Take Derry Hill, for example, which is quite close to me. There's 2 development limits or settlement limits, and they're broken up by an expanse of ground that isn't developed on. It's quite obvious that that's the case, and then there's arguments there. Well, is there not a natural argument to fill that gap with, and bring the 2 spaces together? But in this instance, I just don't get a sense of a development limit as such, because there is that sporadic, continuous sense of development, and, I can get and I can see where the applicant's coming from on that. And just on, I made the point at the time, just that extra development that's on ahead of the development site, and you said, there were, these houses had, enjoyed the benefits of previous policy. Can you outline just in terms of, and I don't expect you to go through every one, but just sort of the ones closest, what the policy points previously were that allowed those houses to be approved? Thanks.
You're all right, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Alderman Wilson. You'll see from the report, obviously we've gone, I accept there is a pressure for development here. It's very clear pressure for development here. I accept as well, when you look at it, as you say, it isn't immediately obvious on the ground where the demarcation of the settlement limit is, but from an officer point of view, there is a settlement limit here, and that is defined, and that's defined in the area plan. So there's a difference between settlement, the policy for development in the settlement and policy for development in the countryside. The sites in the countryside, so obviously we're assessing against PPS 21. There were a number of dwellings to the north of the application site, and I think the map that I've sort of submitted, you can see where those dwellings are. And the majority of those were approved prior to the current planning policy, PPS 21, or even PPS 14, which preceded PPS 21 coming into being. Prior to that, we had the rural strategy, and it was very much a site-by-site basis. You didn't have to have a need to live in the countryside. It was very much whether the site was acceptable in its own right in terms of integration, in terms of build-up, and in terms of all other constraints. So the majority of the housing that you see there to the north of the application site was approved prior to the current policy consideration, where it has to comply with one of the policies set out in PPS 21. Now, obviously, there are a couple of houses there that were approved under the current policy, and touched on this last month. Under CTY 10, there's a couple of applications there that were approved under the farm in need, but they complied with the majority of the criteria for dwelling on a farm, in that it was on a farm, the farm was active, they could prove the farm was established, and no other sites had been sold off. And in order to comply with the policy, they were siting beside buildings that were in the settlement limit, but they complied with all the other points of policy. There's also another one there, you'll see, I think it's number 15, which was actually approved under CTY 8. So it was under the infill policy, so it was a small gap within a substantial and continuously built up frontage, and officers were satisfied that they would have complied with the CTY 8 policy. But the remainder of the remainder of the dwellings are with either dwellings inside the settlement limit, in which case PPS 21 doesn't apply, or it was the older policy, the rural design strategy, that would applied at that time.
Are you happy enough, Alderman Wilson? Yeah. Sorry, just... There was only one, it was more comment that I would just like to say. We will have a policy in place, and I think if we come away from that policy, we're opening floodgates for everybody else to come in and go against our own policy that we made. So that's the only comment that I would like to say. Is there anyone else with any other questions? No? Can we go then to the debate, if anybody has anything? No? Okay. We just need now to make a decision. Can we have a proposer and seconder for either for Roisin's proposal or not? Alderman Wilson?
Yeah, and I suppose I respect what you're saying in terms of PPS, 21, but, in terms of my, position on it, it wasn't a policy I created. That's the policy we're, handed and what we navigate around, but it is, ultimately an interpretation of that. So that's why, I enjoyed going out to see it, and I feel just due to the unique aspects of it, and every application is treated on its own merits, and I don't completely buy into the fact that, you know, you make a decision and then it ultimately has an impact on another decision. Each decision is taken individually, because I've tried to make that case for other issues in both for and against circumstances, and I'm always told that, no, you have to deal with the application that's in front of you. You can't think about what happens after that. You know, that's been the way it's been, you know, explained to me, and I just feel, given, you know, how, you know, this is right on the periphery of that so-called limit, but it's so hard to identify. Then when you look around and you see houses beyond that limit that have enjoyed, you know, the provision the previous policy has allowed. So, you know, it's just based on that, on the you know, the realities on the ground, and that I mean, I don't mind proposing that we do permit this application. So we'll just make that a proposal. Not saying everybody else has to agree with me, but what I'm saying is, from what I've truthfully seen on the ground, it would convince me that, you know, the impact of this wouldn't be as severe as is suggested.
Okay, we have a proposal from Alderman Wilson. Alderman Candy, would you like to come in now?
I was just saying along the same lines as yourself, that it's a policy. It is sporadic development when you go in the lane, and there's houses everywhere, but it's within settlement, and there's a policy there. So I'm a counteract. I was happy to propose it, but accept the officer's recommendation. This one, I don't think it's the end of the line for it. As Roisin said on site, there may be other options if they re-examine it. So I would propose to accept the officer's recommendation.
Okay, so we have a counter proposal there. Councillor Mulholland, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. And it's just really listening to what everybody was said there. And again, yes, it is a application for outline plan permission in the countryside, but I do think in this case it's maybe warrants a wee bit for looking at, which we did do. And it's because of that, and went out and looked at the location, that I would be in agreement with Alderman Wilson here, and I would like to second his proposal.
We have a proposal from Alderman Wilson and a second from Councillor Mulholland. Councillor Flaherty, would you like in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Roisin, for all the report, and thank you also for guiding me through my first site visit on this committee. It was very useful, actually. Very, very useful. My concern is similar to the Chair and my colleague here, in particular with the road structure, as we discussed that morning. So, in the round, I'm more than happy to second my colleague's proposal to accept your recommendation, Planning Officer.
Okay, so we're going to take a vote then. It'll be a vote on Alderman Wilson's proposal, seconded by Councillor Mulholland. Is it going up here? Yep, it'll come up any second. Sorry, has everyone voted? We're just missing one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, everyone? So it was 3 yes and 3 no. I didn't want to be in this position on my first time as chair. So I will use my casting vote. And I understand where everybody's coming from. Totally understand. I do get Alderman Wilson, the area and how close and all it is. The site visit was very informative, but I will have to go with policy, and I am going to use my casting vote and say no. Sorry. We will go now to the proposal from Alderman Kennedy and seconded. Then that carries. Alderman Kennedy and Councillor Flaherty carries. So that concludes that first one, and I'm going back to that chair.
Okay, folks, so we're all settled and we'll move on. We're moving on to Appendix 2, which is application number LA08 2024-0653F. Paul Tolan's up for approval. This is a returning application, members, and an addendum report has been circulated. Roisin, our Principal Planning Officer, is going to present the report and a PowerPoint presentation as well. So, Roisin, if I bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for an extension to an established Spar supermarket convenience store at number 20 to 24 Mill Street, Tandragee. The two-storey building at number 30 Mill Street is proposed to be demolished in order to accommodate the proposed extension, and the existing access between numbers 30 and 32 is proposed to be narrowed but retained overall as a residential pedestrian access for the occupants of the existing dwellings at number 32 and 34. The existing access at Mill Street is proposed to be widened with 2 egress lanes and 1 ingress lane to access the car park and proposed fuel pumps. There are two proposed fuel pumps and associated canopy, and 2 underground fuel tanks also proposed. Members will recall this application was deferred at the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee on the 1st of October to allow the applicant the opportunity to submit further information in relation to refuse management on the site. An amended site layout was submitted showing the location of the refuge storage area moved approximately 9.7 metres to the west and reorientated on the site. The area beside number 5 Old Mill Court, where the refuge storage area was originally to be located, is now a proposed landscape buffer area to be maintained by Henderson Group. A bin storage area details and management arrangements document has also been submitted, which confirms the bin storage area will be used to store general waste, food and cardboard. It will be locked overnight with bin collections between 7 AM and 9 AM on Tuesdays for general waste, Wednesdays for cardboard waste and Thursdays for food waste. The area will be kept tidy and hosed out at least weekly and will not be used after 11 PM any night. Further neighbour notifications were carried out and an updated comment has been received from number 5 Old Mill Court, which advises in relation to the bin storage area, the Henderson Group have presented a fair solution in their opinion. Officers are content that the amended location of the bin storage area and the bin storage area details and management arrangements, which sets out how the refuse area will be managed, satisfactorily addresses the issues that had been raised by concerned residents. One further letter of objection was received, raising concerns regarding noise, fumes, additional traffic and impact on existing businesses. All of the matters raised have been fully considered and officers' consideration of these matters is set out in detail in the report. Officers remain satisfied that the proposed development complies with the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies, and on this basis there is no change to the officer recommendation that planning permission be granted. And I'll just take you through the presentation again, which includes the updated layout. So this is just our location of the site within the general area. And this is the site location plan submitted with the application. You can see the application site outlined in red. And this is an aerial photograph of the site. You can see the car park and the existing shop. And this is an extract from the area plan, just showing you the location of where it is in the context of the area plan. So this is a view of the existing site from Mill Street, and that's the existing Mill Street access. And that's just a closer view of the existing Spar shop as exists. And a close-up of the existing Mill Street entrance, which is being improved and widened. And that's up at the junction of Mill Street and Guildford Street, to the top end of the site. And this is a view from Mill Street looking down towards the Guildford Street junction. This is the existing Guildford Street entrance. And another view of the site from Guildford Street. And just a view of the current Spar shop from the car park inside the site. And another view from within the car park. And again, sorry, the site location plan. And this is the existing site plan, so you can see the size of the existing shop and the outbuildings to the rear of numbers 30 and 32, which are to be removed. And this is the updated site plan, and you can see, it's probably difficult to see on that, but the bin storage area has been moved. Where previously it was beside number 5 Old Mill Court, it has now been moved to down towards the shop beside the 2 parking areas, so it has been moved away from number 5. And that area between adjacent to number 5 will be a landscaped area. These are the existing elevations of the Spar shop and adjoining development. And these are the proposed elevations, and you can see the design of the extension is very much reflective of what's already there. And this is the fuel canopy, which is located within the application site. The proposed ground floor plan and the proposed first floor plan. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, members.
Roisin, thank you very much for your presentation. Members, that was a returned application from last month's Planning Committee meeting. We had a very lengthy and interesting discussion at the time. Is there any questions for Roisin? There's nobody here to speak on this application this time, so any questions? Alderman Wilson, I'll bring you in first.
No, thanks. And just in terms of the clarification, I'm grateful for that bit of work that's been done. I know, there was an expectation of an approval. I get all that, but also get, the democracy of this committee and the fact that people can come and present a different view as they did and did well. So in response to that, I'm pleased that work, has been positive and it's been timely, and great respect and credit to you for getting it back within the month, and that respects the whole economic aspect of this case and the development and the inward investment. That being said, we're content, and residents content they have had a feedback through this with a proposed new location, and there's a general relief, or at least a sense of contentment that change has been well received, and it will be positively impacting on them as opposed to negatively.
Thank you very much, Alderman Wilson. Roisin will bring you in.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Alderman Wilson. Yes, we really were notified once we received the amended site layout, and obviously the residents that had raised the concern at committee have commented, and they have said that they feel this is a fair resolution, a fair solution. Now, there was one further letter of objection received in response to further neighbour notification, but A lot of the issues that were raised in that letter of objection had previously been dealt with by ourselves. They'd been raised by other people and it related to fumes, noise, access, traffic. So that had previously been dealt with in the report, but you'll see from the then report we've tried to address that again. But certainly in relation to the bin storage area, that specific issue, yes, the concerned residents have set out in writing that they feel is a fair solution.
Thank you very much, Roisin. Alderman Wilson, you're looking back in.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just on the back of that, I did forward, communication to you that was sent to me after the previous publicity around the meeting. Someone got in contact with me, but it was simply just to highlight a number of issues that had been discussed, and I says, look, in the interest of fairness, you should forward them to the committee and ultimately yourself for consideration. So, a lot of that ground was covered, and some of the other concerns, they will be dealt with by condition and the adherence to those conditions, I suppose. There will be a rule going forward for planning. If some of those conditions aren't met or they're broken, then there will be, follow-up work by planner to ensure that that'll be the case. Could you confirm that, please?
Okay, thank you, Alderman Wilson. Roisin, will bring you back in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, you'll see from the original report we had proposed a number of conditions in relation to noise, light, etc., etc. So yes, obviously if there's any concern that those conditions are not being adhered to, that would be followed up by ourselves.
Thank you very much, Roisin. Content, Alderman Wilson. Thank you very much. Members, is there any further questions? If there's not, we'll move into the debate stage. Has anybody any thoughts on the amended application? If not, we'll move on to decisions. Oh, sorry, Alderman Kennedy, I'll bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment, more or less. It was handed over to Roisin on the agents for getting a good speedy resolution. I said at the previous application that it was only rejuggling the interior layout of the forecourt, and that it shouldn't be an issue. So thank you very much for getting it over the line so quickly.
Yes, point well made, Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Wilson, I'd moved into discussion, or into decision stage. Is that all right for you? Yep, bring it in now.
Yeah, I'm just happy to propose, just given the work that's been done. It has, dealt with a number of the queries and concerns of residents, so I'm happy to propose.
Thank you very much, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Kennedy, I'll bring you in.
I'll be enough for the second.
Thank you very much, Alderman Kennedy. So, members, that has been proposed by Alderman Wilson and seconded by Alderman Kennedy. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much, members. Okay, members, we're going to move on. Roisin, are we taking 3 and 4 together? No, okay. I forgot to ask that at the pre-meeting, members, so just to get that clarified now, I should have done it earlier. So, members, we're going to move on to Appendix 3, which is application number LA08 2025 0737F. It's from Stuart Glass and it's approval. And Roisin is going to take us through this report. So, Roisin, I'll hand over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of ball stop netting on lands northwest of Craigavon Leisure Centre at Brownlow Road. The application is being presented to committee tonight as council is the landowner. So the application is seeking full planning permission for the erection of ball stop netting and posts which will stand between 3 to 6.7 metres high above ground level. The base of the netting will be secured to the existing chain link fence by a nylon rope, and the top of the netting will be hung from galvanised wire fixed to the posts. The application site is located within the development limit of Craigavon urban area on land zoned as existing open space. Officers are of the opinion that the use of the land for open space purposes will not be prejudiced by the proposed development. The proposal is considered to comply with the provisions of Policy OS1 and the corresponding paragraphs of the SPPS and is therefore acceptable in principle. Officers considered the proposed ball stop netting will provide increased safety to users of the pitch and the surrounding lands by stopping balls from being kicked over into adjacent areas of open space, and are satisfied the proposed development as a whole is acceptable in terms of scale, design and layout and material finishes, and is appropriate for the character of the area and for the intended use of the development. Given the limited public vantage points, the presence of established mature vegetation located adjacent to the pitch, the large expanse of open space adjacent to the proposal, and the level of the pitch in relation to dwellings, officers are of the opinion that the fencing will not be visually obtrusive at this location, and there will be no detrimental impact on visual amenity or detract from the character of the area. Officers are satisfied the existing uses of the site is not changing, and given the separation distances from surrounding residential developments as set out in more detail in the report, the proposed fencing will not have an adverse impact on their amenity. No nature conservation, archaeology or built heritage features have been identified within the site, and officers are satisfied this development in itself will not generate any additional traffic to the site. On balance, officers will recommend the application be approved subject to the conditions set out. And this is just the site within the general area. And this is an aerial context of the site, and you can see obviously the old leisure centre, the hub, the library, and the existing pitches to the top left of that. This is our site location plan. The red line goes actually around the entirety of the pitch. And I know it's really difficult to see from this layout, but there's an existing fence around the wider perimeter of the pitch, and this proposal is basically to add posts to that and to put netting to the top of the existing fence to stop balls going into the wider area. So this is the proposed fence detail. So the lower half of the picture is the existing fence, and you can see then the posts and the netting that's added to the top of the fence, which goes around the majority of the perimeter of the site. And that's just an aerial view of the site, so I don't know if you can see the fencing, but there is existing fencing there. And that maybe just gives you an idea of what the existing fencing looks like. That's just the access to the site. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, members.
Roisin, thank you very much for your presentation there. So, members, is there any questions for Roisin on this application? There's a few. There's Councillor Lavery. I'll bring you in first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Roisin, for the presentation. Suppose just a brief question, Roisin. So is the new ball stop netting going to go around the whole rectangle of the facility, or is it more focused on sort of the two back ends, so to speak, or if you could just clarify that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Bring in Roisin now.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. It's going around the majority of the site, so it's going right along the entirety of the left-hand side, the bottom end, the top end, and part of the right-hand side that doesn't have the building to the right, just where it joins the building at either end.
Okay, thank you very much, Roisin. You're content, Councillor Lavery, with that? Okay, members, is there any other questions regarding this application? If not, we'll move into the debate stage. And you all seem to think it's a good idea, so we'll move into decision stage. So, members, if we have a proposer, Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you, Roisin, for presenting what is a thorough application. I think we've had a few applications relating to the site, and I know another one later on today to improve this area for, I think it's a football club and other users, and it seems to be going down quite well, and the application will improve the situation, I suppose, for footballers of my ability, where they're hitting more around the net than the back of the net. At least they'll have less to go if they do end up booting it away. They don't have to go into the trees. So looks very good for the site, and I wish the applicant well. I'm happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. It's been proposed by Councillor Peter Lavery. I'll bring in Councillor Mutra.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, happy to second. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's good to see value added to a council asset. So wish them all the very best with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mutra. So, members, it has been proposed by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Mutra. We all agreed? Yep, thank you very much. Members, that takes us to our final application of the evening. That is application number LA08 2025-0738F. It's from Stuart Glass. It's up for approval, and Roisin's going to take us through the report in PowerPoint. So I'll bring Roisin in now.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of a 3.6 metre high fence and hard standing area to be used for the storage of football nets on lands northwest of Craigavon Leisure Centre at Brownlow Road. The application is being presented to committee tonight as the council is the landowner. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of a fence and the creation of a hard standing area. The area of the hard standing will be approximately 880 square metres. It will be finished with permeable stone and will provide a storage area for nets when not being used, approximately 54 nets. The pitch is currently used by all age groups from youth to senior.
Roisin, just bear with me a second. IT, there's a thing coming up on the screen about the meetings non-confidential. Is it just still broadcasting? Still broadcasting, it's just an error on the screen, so. We're still broadcasting, sorry, it doesn't matter what's on the screen here. We're still live, guys, we're still live. So, Roisin, I'll just come to an issue when the PowerPoint has to come on, so we'll get through your report, Roisin, first.
Okay. The application site is located within the development limit of the Craigavon urban area on land zoned as existing open space. Officers are of the opinion the use of the land for open space purposes will not be prejudiced by the proposed development. The proposal is considered to comply with the provisions of Policy OS1 and the corresponding paragraphs of the SPPS and is therefore acceptable in principle. Officers consider the proposed development in the whole is of a scale, design, layout and materials appropriate for the...
Roisin, I'm sorry, I've just been advised we're going to have to pause there just to get this sorted. I have a coughing fit. Excuse me. Oh, apologies, folks, for that. I think we're back on, Roisin. So, oh, okay. Roisin, I think we'll need to start again because I think we were kicked out there briefly. So, apologies. So, can you start again, Roisin?
No problem. Yeah. So, this application is for the erection of a 3.6 metre high fence and hard standing area to be used for the storage of football nets on lands northwest of Craigavon Leisure Centre at Brownlow Road. The application is being presented to committee tonight as the council is the landowner. So the application seeks full plan permission for the erection of a fence and creation of a hard standing area. The area of the hard standing will be approximately 888 square metres. It will be finished with permeable stone and will provide a storage area for nets when not being used, and it's approximately 54 nets. The pitch is currently used by all age groups from youth to senior level. The application site is located within the development limit of Craigavon urban area on land zoned as existing open space. Officers are of the opinion that the use of the land for open space purposes will not be prejudiced by the proposed development. The proposal is considered to comply with the provisions of Policy OS1 and the corresponding paragraphs of the SPPS and is therefore acceptable in principle. Officers consider the proposed development in the whole is of a scale, design, layout and materials finish appropriate for the character of the area and the intended use of the development. Given the limited public vantage points, the presence of established mature vegetation, the large expanse of open space adjacent to the proposal, officers are of the opinion that the fencing and the area for storage of football nets will not be visually obtrusive in this location and there will be no detrimental impact on the visual amenity or detract from the character of the area. Officers are satisfied that the existing use of the site is not changing and that given the separation distance from surrounding residential development, the proposed fencing and hard standing area will not have an adverse impact on the amenity. No nature conservation, archaeology or built heritage features have been identified within the site and officers are satisfied the development in itself will not generate any additional traffic to the site. On balance, officers recommend that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out. And I'll just take you through the PowerPoint. And you'll see again, obviously we're in the same area as the previous application. Again, this is the aerial context of the site, so you can see the existing pitches there. You can see the red square box to the right of the main pitch, and that's where the storage area is to be located. And the area shaded in peach is the area that will be surrounded by a fence, and that'll be hard, permeable stone and be used for storage of nets. And this is just a fence detail, an elevation of the proposed fence which will go around the area. And again, the red arrow denotes where the storage area is going to be located. And again, that's just our access to the site, so it's kind of to the right hand side of that building will be the storage area. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, members.
Roisin, as always, thank you very much. Members, you've heard Roisin's report. It's the same location as the last one. Is there any questions in regards to this application? If not, we'll just move to... Councillor Donnelly, you're looking in.
Thanks, Chair. Are these nets or goal posts and nets all together? Is it just the nets or goal posts and nets on them?
Roisin, bring an answer to that.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for a storage area surrounded by a 3.6 metre fence. Previous application was nets on top of the existing fence, like ball stop nets, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, so that's that. If there's no further questions, we didn't have a debate stage last time, so I'm just going to move into decision stage, and this one is a similar application. Is anybody prepared to propose it? Oh, it's a slow start there, but we got there. Okay, Councillor Duffy.
Yes, happy to propose that recommendation.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. So that has been proposed by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Are you all agreed, members? Thank you very much. Okay, members, thank you very much for your time this evening, and thanks also to officers who made this meeting possible. So that will draw the meeting to a close. So we can stop the live feed.